What up, everybody? Welcome to the Xcast. Right about now, we want to welcome you to the greatest podcast on earth, hosted by yours truly, the XSP. I want to hear you say Xcast, Xcast. Xcast, 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 Xcast. We're back.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is the Xcast, and right now, I got a very special guest, hailing from California, now residing in Texas. I want to welcome everybody, JP, the Hustler. Tell him what's up, JP.
Hey, what's going on, man? Just want to say what's up to everybody out there, everyone listening. Hope everyone had a very good Thanksgiving and, has a good holiday season.
All right, man. Well, look, check this out. I want this to be something totally different than any other interview you've ever had. So I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever seen something that you could not explain? Maybe something in the paranormal, maybe something like that. Have you ever seen anything like this?
There's different things in my life that I've definitely seen throughout that were unexplained. You see something in the sky, some lights in the sky, that you never hear about on the news. You're not quite sure exactly what it was, or far out stuff like that. As far as paranormal or like ghosts or anything like that, I can't really say that I've really encompassed or encountered anything like that. Definitely, I don't know, that's a tough one. That is a different question. I've never gotten something like that in an interview. So let me sit and think about that while we go through our questions, and I'll get back to you on that.
So once we kind of come back to it, that's cool. So what was life like in California as a young hustler?
My life, I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in a city called Glendale, California, which is right next to Burbank, and it was different. We didn't have a lot of money when I was young. My father was actually just starting through law school when I was a kid, so he was working full time and going to school. So the first probably 5-6 years of my life, we were pretty living paycheck to paycheck while he was getting through school. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and it was cool. It was cool. I appreciated the time. And then when I hit about 9 years old, we moved to San Fernando Valley, which, if any of you know about San Fernando Valley, that is the home of the adult industry, pretty much worldwide. So that was definitely an interesting experience growing up in San Fernando Valley.
So, in all this as a young man, did you have any kind of not connection, but any kind of experience did that ever touch your home life, I guess you could say, living up in that environment? Not that so much per se, but I will say that there's a desensitization of that type of experience in and around that area. So basically, I guess the thoughts and feelings towards that type of industry is somewhat relaxed. Now, did it touch me personally? Not really, not as far as that's concerned, but, I did see and come across some kind of crazy things, not in my childhood, but I'd say in my latter teens and early adulthood. I definitely saw some crazy things related to that. But as my youth, no, I had a pretty subdued youth as far as that's concerned. All right.
I had other, crazy things going on in my childhood, but that had to do more with I had, members of my family that were struggling with substance abuse and things of that nature, and that's kind of more what touched home with me and what affected me as a youth. I had a brother, I still have a brother, but kind of estranged to me, but he was at a very young age, he was trying to pursue the rock and roll experience pretty much in the heyday of, the hair metal scene in the 80s. And so pursuing that endeavor at that time, he got caught up, in the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. And, it kind of took him astray. And, something he's still battling with these days. Although not on the same level, but my relationship with my brother probably hasn't been the same since late 80s, very early 90s. So I would say as far as the Hollywood experience, I'd say my brother was definitely a casualty of that. And fortunately for me, seeing how it affected him and certain choices he made, it kind of steered me away from making those kind of choices. So when I decided that I wanted to pursue music, it kind of guided me away from certain things, things I didn't want to get involved with because I saw that, some of those roads are a dead end.
Right. So what was it that sparked the whole rap thing or the whole musical interest in your life?
I would say it was partially my brother at a young age, exposing me to all kinds of different music. Definitely his preference was rock, so I got introduced to a lot of classic rock because of him. And then I think from there, the whole emergence of rap and hip hop in the early 80s, one of the first things I remember seeing on TV being young is, like a Run DMC video, and I just remember the sound and the energy and the music just grabbed me. And then later on when I hit that pivotal age of, I'd say about 9 or 10, when kids really start getting into music, that's when the Beastie Boys blew up, and they were everywhere. And so, I've said this before, and, it's always a joke, but as a little kid, I always, thought I would be the fourth Beastie Boy. You know what I mean? I was definitely pulled in from that. And then, I guess as I grew up at the right time, as far as hip hop was getting bigger, as I was getting bigger. So I kind of grew with the popularity of hip hop going from an underground thing or a very niche thing into, growing into popular culture by, the early mid-90s.
So you get into the whole hip hop game, the whole music game. When was it that you started to produce or dabble, or do you play instruments, or how did it all come about?
I would say I was about 15 or 16. I was thumbing through the different hip hop magazines at the time, like Source, Rap Pages, Double XL didn't even exist yet, but I would say like Rap Pages and Source magazine. And I remember thumbing through, and they would have the ads in the middle of the magazine, be a producer or, be a rapper, whatever. And it would show like, go to this music store and buy this beat machine or, buy these turntables or this equipment or whatever. And I think it kind of sparked something in my brain where I said, hey, it would be kind of fun to try to get into this and do something myself. I always had ideas of rhythm and melody in my head, and always felt like, I don't know, I think I always had a producer's spirit. Even as a little kid, I was always thinking, hey, if you mix this with this or have this kind of rhythm or that melody together would sound good. So I think when I started seeing, ads for stuff like that in the hip hop magazines, I was like, that might be kind of cool to do. So I asked my parents to help, get me a couple pieces of equipment, and we're talking like really cheap pieces of equipment. So like I had like a cassette 4-track recorder,
right,
a rolling drum machine, I think a Radio Shack microphone, and some other, pretty inexpensive pieces of equipment. And I just started experimenting, and I would say I was about 16 when I started, and then probably started experimenting with actually rapping when I was 18 or 19, and so that's when I started, writing rhymes and doing all that. And I would say, the stuff there was pretty horrible, but that was definitely, how I got my foot in the door. And I was always drawn more, I think, to the production side than the rapping side, although I love writing and I do love recording and I love performing. But if I had to choose, I would say the production end has always pulled me in from the beginning.
Listening to that story reminds me of how I started. I had the same thing, Tascam 4-track recorder,
Right.
Casio keyboard, and a karaoke mic. That's how it kind of got the ball rolling. You go back and play the same thing over and over again for 3 minutes, then go back, play another thing, another melody, go back, play a bass line, and it seems like you kind of went up kind of the same. We kind of came up in the same area as far as like what do you call it, producing, but I also learned how to play instruments. Do you play any instruments? Like, I hear some of the production on your albums, and it's very organic sounding, as if there was actual instruments played, not just samples.
Yeah, it's a mix. I dabble in bass a little bit. I also, I dabble in drums a little bit. I mean, I'm not a great player with any instrument, but I am, I'm a hack, but I can get the sounds that I want. And, with today's technology, the way you can manipulate stuff, you can be creating a groove, you could be jamming or doing whatever, record, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and then find a good loop in there of something that you did, and then, make your own loop. I'm very big as far as making my own loops out of, instrumentals that I've laid down, or even I have a guitarist and a bassist and some other people that I work with, that same thing, I'll have them do a little jam session for me, and what I'll do is sometimes I'll pick through and I'll find loops and what's been done, and then I'll utilize that, and then I'll add my drums and I'll add everything else to it. So I definitely like doing the mix of organic, or at least, homemade loops and samples that I made versus, something you would... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There's one of the things that I noticed about your production. A lot of people, especially here in Texas or in County Houston and some of those areas, they like to do a lot of sampling where you kind of take a hook from a certain song, put that in the chorus piece, and then they kind of wrap around that. One of the things that was very unique as far as your music goes is it's very original, very like I was saying, organic. It sounds very original. It's not like anybody else's music.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think the biggest thing for me with that, it's twofold. Number one is when I'm creating a song, the first thing I'm thinking about is this going to be a performance song? And if it's a performance song, then I'm going to have a hook that I can perform on stage. And if you just have, something sampled and looped, or even something heavy scratching on the hook, it's going to be very hard to perform that type of song live. And so that's the first thing going into it. The second part of it, and that goes into the hook. The hook is the most important part of the song. And that's one of those things that, I go back and I credit Insane Poetry, someone that I worked with from 2001 to even now still we work on some stuff. And, we had discussed it when we were working on songs in the early 2000s, and, just that the hook is the most important part of the song, especially with a live performance. And the way an underground artist is going to propel themselves in this scene with the oversaturation of artists is,
right.
You have to perform, and you have to have music that's going to grab people in the performance. So if you have a slow tempo track that has, a couple sampled words in the hook that just loop over and over again, it's going to be hard to take that song and translate it live into something that's going to grab a fan or a potential fan's attention and have them, want to come back for more. Want to buy your product, want to listen to more music. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's one of the things I noticed when I met you in Austin. is that you had not only the look, but you also had the music. And this is the reason why I wanted to start, kind of connecting anyway, because you have that sound. Like I said, it's a it's hype, but it's also original, and it grabbed me, dude. I mean, that's the way. That's exactly what you're talking about now. Is exactly why I'm talking to you on this podcast right now. Is because you grabbed me at that night, and I know there wasn't a whole lot of people at the show, or kind of things with circumstances and whatnot, but you grabbed me. And that was, you made a new fan that night, and that's a wonderful thing. Talking about your mindset as far as the live show. Most fans come from live shows, and it's good to see you have the passion to get up on there and actually perform the song. Because I know a lot of people nowadays like to have the vocal track underneath and kind of just let that go. And if they mess up, then they mess up or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's kind of how do you feel? And I know you do a lot of your own vocals on there. How do you feel about these younger cats coming in with the vocal track underneath as they're rapping over it?
Okay, so I've done it both ways, and it really depends on my audience, the song, if I have a hype man or not. Actually, in that show, I had some vocals underneath me. The thing is I project so loud on the mic live that you're going to hear me over the track no matter what. I think it's okay as long as you don't use that as a crutch and you don't lip sync your performance as you're going along. If I have a hype person, if I have someone that knows my material and we have it rehearsed, I like to go without or go with minimal backing vocals, maybe just dubs or something in there or just the hook. It's not always the way you can do it. Like I said, if I perform solo, a lot of times I will have backing vocals, but I'm very loud on the mic, so you definitely know I'm rapping. You can hear me, you can see me, right, and know that I'm putting everything into it.
Right. So you put a lot of energy in your stage show.
I try, because if I'm there, whether I'm performing for, 5, 50, 500 people, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put in the same energy, no matter what, because that's what I'm there to do. I mean, I'm on stage to present my goods, to present what I can do. And, if you paid as a fan to come to a show, or you're another artist at the show, or you're a promoter at the show, or whatever, time is valuable, and you're there to be entertained, and I'm going to do my best to create an entertaining performance if I can. So, going back to the using backup vocals, I think it's okay as long as you don't use it as a crutch and you don't lip sync your performance and you're still there to put on a good show. The artists that can just spit over a beat with no backing vocals or anything, I mean, I give it up because I've seen artists who can do that day in and day out. And, it's a great thing. Like, for instance, freestyling. I am not a great freestyler. I can spit a cappella and do all that, but I'm a producer. I haven't put in the time in my craft to be able to freestyle on spot and give you some really clever rhymes and stuff like that. Admittedly, that, I'm not a freestyler. And the people who can just freestyle off the dome and really say some clever stuff. And you can tell a lot of times when people are reciting pre-written or when it's really off the dome. And the people who can really freestyle off the dome, I mean, I give it up because that is definitely a craft and a technique and a talent. And I have come across some MCs who can do that, and it's a wonderful thing, So that's an aspect. That's an aspect of the craft that I think, we are losing with a lot of, artists, especially the rappers who they're just MCs. That is what they do. They MC. And a lot of them that claim to be MC, they don't write all their stuff originally. They haven't learned the craft of performing on stage. They haven't learned the craft of freestyling, or at least being able to recite a cappellas and be able to pull from different songs. So that's what a lot of people do when they freestyle. They'll pull bits and pieces from different songs that they've written. But you'll find a lot of artists who can't do that. But the ones who can, that's when I'm in awe. I'll just sit there and watch an artist and give it up and be like, yeah, that's one of those elements of hip hop that we're definitely, I'm not going to say missing, but it's harder to find when you have the industry saturated with a lot of the hobby MCs, who aren't really putting in the time into their craft.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of transition a little bit. What's the scene like as far as the difference from the contrast California and now you're residing in Texas? How do they differ? I know you've been asked this question before, but maybe you could expand a little bit, just for just to let us know a little bit more.
Sure. And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna be a little biased because, or I'm gonna say I'm gonna be ignorant to the scene of Texas just a little bit because I've only been here a year, and although I've done performances before in Texas and Dallas and Houston and Austin, starting back in like 2010 to now, I don't really have my finger on the pulse of the underground here. However, from what I've seen, the shows I've done, the promoters that I've talked to, and people I have worked with so far, in California, it's very, very saturated, and you have there's a lot of opportunity, and it works in the positive and the negative. But I'm going to say in Southern California, on any given night, you're going to have 50 to 75 hip-hop shows going on somewhere, if not more. And what that creates is a lot of opportunity for artists, new artists, and promoters and everything to be able to be in the scene. At the same time, the market's very oversaturated, so you fall into a situation where you have less quality hip-hop occurring. You have people being taken advantage of, people who maybe aren't as talented, who are having to pay exorbitant prices to perform with quote-unquote headliners. You have a lot of stuff going on. Now, in the Texas scene, from what I've seen, is I believe there's more unity from what I've seen, at least the people I've worked with. There's more unity in the scene here in the different cities. However, I'm not sure there's as many opportunities going on. For instance, in Dallas, where I'm at right now, there's a scene, and I have been more and more kind of getting my toes, wet with the scene here, but I still don't see the same opportunities overall, as many shows happening, as many shows being promoted. You go to California, you're seeing flyers everywhere. You're seeing, it's hitting you everywhere. You know what I mean? I haven't seen that as much out here, and it may be because I'm not looking in the right places, but I feel like from when I was doing shows in Dallas in 2010 to now, I feel like some of the scene is kind of dissipated, at least for underground hardcore hip hop. Now I know, there's all different kinds, the trap sound and, a lot of different sounds going on. That's really what I hear is when I'm cruising down the street and I hear people playing hip hop out here, I'm hearing the trap sound. I'm definitely hearing the southern sound out here, and so obviously that is a big transition, because when I'm in California, I hear a lot of different types of hip hop going on. Obviously there's West Coast hip hop being played a lot, but there's so many hip hop heads out there, that I'm always hearing all kinds of hip hop being played, and so that's one of the things that I just need to immerse myself more into the scene out here. So, that's one of the things I might look to you and say, hey, what do you see going on? Where are the clubs that you see the shows happening, and the promoters and the artists? You're someone I might come to and ask about that, seriously.
Okay. Well, I know here where I'm from, I'm in the Austin and San Marcos area, a little bit in San Antonio, or at least that's the three major cities where I live. There was a place called the Triple Crown, but it's going to be going out of business here pretty soon. And the White Rabbit in San Antonio is a really good spot for hardcore music in general, whether it be hip hop or punk rock or heavy metal. They run the gamut as far as heavy music. They're a really good spot. and the spot we were at in Austin, that whole strip has several clubs that play heavy music. But like as far as like where I'm from, it's like folk music and Americana. So it's kind of hard to get into the scene, and even here where I'm from, it's hard to get a show because there's these certain cliques, there's these certain crews that kind of run, and they don't like to let anybody else in that's different from their crew. So it's kind of hard because it's kind of like a politic thing where if you don't know them or you haven't known them for a while, they're kind of like, well, maybe we might put you on the next one. Just keep in touch with us or whatever. Kind of like that where I'm from. So, but as far as like Texas Hat Trick Art Sale, really great as far as putting on shows that kind of get people, kind of crowds in there. But Elysium in Austin, the Red Eye Flyer, I guess it's called something different now. But those underground clubs, or Red 7, I think that's what it's called. Those they cater to kind of underground music as far as like where I'm from in that area.
Right.
And I've kind of only brushed the surface in that area. So,
because like in Dallas area, when I was performing in 2010, Deep Ellum, which is huge for arts out here in Dallas, so you have a lot of music going on. You have art. You just have a lot going on here. There were a lot of bars and a lot of clubs in Deep Ellum that would allow a lot of different underground type of music to be played, hip hop or rock or whatever. And from 2010 to now, a lot of those bars and clubs either shut down or they've taken on a policy where they're not going to allow any local hip hop to happen.
Oh.
And that's something.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's something that I've seen kind of go in cycles in different places, even in certain places in Southern California. Like Inland Empire, which is where most of the GRE artists reside. It's near the high desert in Southern California, and that's where we throw 95% of our shows. And there was a time just a couple years ago where they would not allow local hip hop to have shows unless there was a established headliner. And it wasn't so much for the crowd, afraid of getting a crowd in or making their money back at the bar or whatever it may be. It was the violence. And, when the whole thing with the FBI, labeling, being a juggalo a gang, because a lot of the underground in California, and I'm sure it's like this everywhere else, but it's mixed, so you're going to have a show where you have, juggalos with, hardcore hip hop heads and other people kind of mixed at all the hip hop shows. And so, what you had was a lot of the local business owners who were saying, since juggalos are now, considered being part of the gang, we're not going to allow any underground hip hop shows to happen unless it's an established, headliner, and we know that, we're going to have a good crowd, and more importantly, we'll have enough security there so that nothing, pops off or whatever. And so that was an issue that occurred a few years ago, and it's eased up in the last, I'd say, 2 years. Independent local hip hop is flourishing again in many places in Southern California. But I know I heard the same thing was going on in certain parts of Dallas. And I don't know if it's like that everywhere in Texas, and maybe you can shed some light on that.
As far as like people not wanting like a juggalo crowd or like kind of a hit, or I guess they get lumped into the same. Whether it be hip hop, they hear Insane Clown Posse or LSP or something like that, and I think that everyone gets lumped in to the same kind of thing. As for some of the shows I've been to, there has been a whole lot of security issues because everybody's pretty cool with each other. But I have heard where shows were shut down because there was a big crowd of painted face people, or just people getting rowdy before a show. Not necessarily violent, but just kind of rowdy. You know what I mean? And I've seen that, but I haven't seen a whole lot in the last couple of years that I've been doing shows as far as in that kind of crowd. But yeah, I think it's more unity where we're, at least where we are, where I am. There's a lot of unity as far as like, nobody tries to hurt each other. Nobody tries to get in anybody's face or anything like that. And if it is, it's squash real quick.
I would say it's more of a, it was more of a, or it has been more of an overreaction of promoters who, are trying to protect, their venue versus actually them knowing, what's going on in the scene. And, I think another problem with that is when you have really inexperienced, young, for lack of a better word, janky promoters who try to throw shows, who have not a long history of throwing shows, who don't really have respect of the artists that they're trying to put on these shows. I think those are the times when you have shows that get out of hand. You can have something simple like not planning a show correctly and having, say, starting late and running over and having people who can't perform or whatever the issue may be, then you start getting artists who get upset, and then the people they bring get upset, and it can turn into something bigger. And I think a lot of times, if you're a good show promoter, you know how to defuse the situation sometimes before, it gets out of hand, and then you have some of these younger guys who really don't have a lot of experience who are trying to take on more than, what they can handle. Sometimes that helps cause trouble to the scene. And then the venue owners, they can't differentiate, who's a good promoter versus who's not a good promoter or what the, cause of whatever issue is. And then you have venue owners making a unilateral decision and saying, we're just not going to allow hip-hop, or we're just not going to allow Drugville hip-hop, or whatever it may be, when they don't really know what's going on.
It's kind of getting all lumped in together, and it's making it hard for some of these guys trying to come up because they don't have a place to express their craft and whatnot.
No, exactly. And I mean, I really do believe that music is the savior for a lot of people. Music sometimes is, not sometimes, a lot of times, for kids who may be going the wrong route in life, a lot of times music can be, their avenue to vent, their avenue to be creative, their avenue to meet like-minded people and focus their energies into something positive versus into something negative. And a lot of people, I don't know, I don't want to sound old here.
It's all right, man. It's all right. Whenever you get older or whenever you start to grow a little bit in maturity, you want to make sure that those young generations don't make the same mistakes or walk into those paths that they shouldn't be walking into.
Right. I'll just say, I just remember, in the 90s, and I know this happened in the 80s, and I'm sure it happened in the 2000s as well, but, you'd have some parents and some adults that would say, music is a gateway to something negative, and drugs, and this and that, and so on and so forth. And I completely disagree with that. If people are going to go down a certain path, they're going to go down it, whether there's music there or not. But I think if you have artistic, creative, avenues for people to let off steam, for them to be creative, to, like I said, focus their energies on positive things. Even if the music sometimes is negative, sometimes people can express their negative in the music instead of doing something negative. They're able to get that negative energy out. And so, then when they're, living their day-to-day life, they're at peace. And I'll tell you, for me, that's really what it was, because, in my later teen years, I had a lot of stuff going on, like I said, with my family, and like I said, substance abuse, not just my brother, but actually my mother, was battling alcoholism from pretty much my entire life. But it got really, really bad as I reached my middle teenage and later teenage years. And so it caused, just a lot of situations of heartache and depression and a lot of other things going on for me. And so music definitely became a therapeutic thing for me, and especially, doing aggressive music. It was a way for me to get out my frustration and anger and anything else I had going on, and then be able to my day-to-day life be at peace and calm. And, if anyone knows me or has known me, pretty much the majority of my life, you'd say I'm a pretty laid-back guy, pretty, calm guy, whatever. And that is true. And that's because I try to channel any negativity I have through my music so that I'm not holding on to that, day to day. And so I think if we have a situation where we have less and less venues allowing, artists to perform and do their music, I think a lot of these kids are going to turn to other things that aren't so positive to, express themselves.
Right.
And it's the same. Yeah, and I think it's the same thing in the schools. I mean, it's a travesty that, to cut costs, many schools, I don't know what it's like in Texas, but I know in California, they're cutting, arts programs, they're cutting music programs, they're cutting shop. I mean, anything that's extracurricular, basically, they're cutting out because they don't have the money to fund it. And I think what you're doing is you're causing a situation where these kids, especially that are dealing with some negativity at home, they have no way to vent. And the community and the schools are not giving these kids any way to vent, any way to be creative and productive. And so a lot of them are just kind of marinating in the negativity that surrounds them. And I think, it leads to more negativity, and I think the government, whether locally or statewide or even federally, cutting art from, our lives, from children's lives, I think is one of the worst things you can do.
I totally agree. And here's where I live here in San Marcos, Texas, it's not so much that things are being cut, but that the art department has to pay their own expenses. And when our football stadium, or that we have there, the new football stadium, costs so many $1 million, but the art can't get some of that money, or even the special ed can't get some of that money, so that they can just continue on in the school year. But we see a lot of it transferred to football or sports. I mean, which is cool. That gives them that outlet. But those who aren't athletes, those who aren't in that kind of area, those who look towards music are kind of having to put more money than everybody else. So it's kind of hard to continue to rent your tuba for so many dollars a month or whatever. Sometimes it's not able to be paid for, and sometimes they lose interest in that kind of outlet as far as musically. But as far as our high school, we got an orchestra. We have a regular your marching band and choirs and things like that. But like I said, they have to be kind of paid for by the student and their parents or just their parents. When this other kind of things get way more money than what I feel that they should. And when I think that if they would have had more, they should distribute it more evenly, I guess you could say.
Right. Yeah, and I think it all comes down to money, because you're going to have more of the community is going to invest into sports. And, there's with the kind of the change from high school sports to college sports, obviously on the pro, there's a lot more money being funneled into, those with athleticism versus those with just, creative prowess. Because, not a lot of people profit, if you're giving art lessons or music lessons, to little Johnny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but if you have, someone who excels in some kind of sport, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of people who can profit from sports versus
just the individual. It's more of the corporate, I guess you could say.
I believe so. I don't. It's hard when it's hard for someone to make money, or a corporation, or a school, or a city to make money off of, these art programs. They're dealing with it as an added expense that is it's superfluous, and they can cut it and say, hey, you know, it's not making us any money, you need to cut back, so we're going to cut art, we're going to cut shop, we're going to cut, you know, these different things. And I just think it's a bad move, because in the short run, it may seem like a good idea, but I think in the long run, 15, 20 years, you know, when, like I said, when these kids grow up and they haven't had a chance to have a creative and positive outlet, a lot of them are going to, you know, turn to negative outlets. And, you know, I mean, in a very broad sense, you know, I believe in karma, you know, and I believe in what you put in the world is what you get back in the world. And, you know, if you put out positivity and you create a forum for positivity to flourish, I think that's going to come back. And
come back to you, right? And I totally agree. You know, kind of basically what you reap is what you sow. You know, if you put out that positivity, you're going to get it back. You put out the negative, that's automatically going to bring it back just because of that law. Whatever you put into the ground, that's what you're going to get up out of it.
Exactly. So if you're not allowing people to flourish in a positive way, then, you know, they might flourish in a negative way, and you might be a victim of that negativity.
Right, later on down the road. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a musical break, then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the new album, Mad Scientist.
Think I fold up, but I'm back in the lab, and again my habit for damage. I'm bringing life to a savage and then unleashing the gamut. Then I'm releasing the panic. The creature feature, your Frankenstein is the monster you banish. And then I push the switch and itch and mission for the competition. I ain't no bitch and I ain't running from no opposition. My sole ambition is to win, and up I guess I'm wishing. You think I'm bullshitting? Obvious that you don't listen. I am the alchemist, I am the grim reaper, the creator, the destroyer, and the one teacher. I am the alpha, the omega, and the orchestrator. I am the officer, I am the overseer. I'm beyond your comprehension, I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the man up on the mic, I'm the soul speaker. I am the soul reaper, incising with my knife. The reanimator, bringing the music to life. Mad scientist, I am David Banner, the incredible Hulk, and you will feel my anger. I know Octavius, superior to every man. You are the serpentine, I am the son of Sam. Mad scientist, I am David Banner, the incredible Hulk, and you will feel my anger. I know Octavius, superior to every man. You are the serpentine, I am the son of Sam. I am the mechanism at a level mentalism. I raise the devil in the treble music aneurysm. I am the philanthropic and the after-guiding prophet. I bring the light into the blind, the Manhattan Project. And from the death I bring the life, another conscious being. And every word that I recite attracting knowledge seeking. I search in truth until there's proof that all the men are one. While you elitists still will feed upon thy kingdom come. You just some pagans with your data fake and circumspect. Science is scary for the weary with weak intellect. The small and strong can be the victim of parental lie. Your surface swelling is compelling, but your soul will cry. From out the dark will be the light, and then the sky will shine. Another beast, it must release it in your time of crime. I seen the viewers kill the music, now the planet scream. You violated all you taking, now you turn to bleed. Mad scientist, I am David Banner, the incredible Hulk, and you will feel my anger. I know Octavius, superior to every man. You are the serpentine, I am the son of Sam. Mad scientist, I am David Banner, the incredible Hulk, and you will feel my anger. I know Octavius, superior to every man. You are the serpentine, I am the son of Sam.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, we're back. So the new album is called The Mad Scientist. How did this project come about? What was the idea, the thought structure for this new record?
For Mad Scientist, I wanted to take, I won't say consciously I wanted to take a more hip-hop kind of out. I'll just say that kind of, I was in a frame of mind where I was drawing upon my roots. From being a teenager, I was listening to a lot more of the 90s boom bap hip-hop, a lot of the East Coast stuff that I kind of grew up on in junior high and high school. And, you know, a lot of my previous albums were, you know, markedly West Coast sounding, very West Coast influence, and and that's what I grew up with and around. But I would say, some of the feedback that I got from some of my music from fans and other artists and even people that I work with was, I'd like to really hear you do some more hip hop, some more of that 90s boom bap, the essence of hip hop, and I was thinking, I was like, there's always been that vibe that kind of, strings through all my music, but I never did a decidedly hip hop type album like that. And so I think from that, I started getting back into my roots, and then it just kind of happened. And so the mad scientist thing kind of just came from, the fact that I'm the guy in the lab for GRE, cooking up the beats. I'm the one that kind of, is working to kind of,
experimenting with sounds and trying to get something new, trying to create something new.
Exactly. Obviously it's a play on words and a play on imagery, obviously what the straightforward meaning would be, as a metaphor from, working on the music and what I do with the music. But I actually, the title of the album came from the song. I did the very first song I recorded for this album, before I even knew a concept or I knew anything, was Mad Scientist. I made the beat, and I was sitting there, and usually the first thing I do is I'll write the hook. I'll let the beat play, and I kind of, I'll start freestyling a little bit, and I usually freestyle my hooks. It's like whatever comes to me, what sounds good to the beat, that's kind of what I go with. And so I had come up with the hook, and the verses kind of wrote themselves, and when I finished with it, I'm like, that would be an awesome title for an album. It kind of explains a lot, and I said, I could take this concept and kind of roll with it and really have it, be a focus on about the music, what the music means to me, and kind of, there's some biographical stuff in there, but really it's my ode to my love of music.
Right.
And
I love the comic book character references all throughout the hook and kind of throughout the verse. Is that something you kind of, was that like intentional, or like would that just kind of happen where you're kind of going off on comic books? Is that something that you kind of reference regularly, or is that something you take a look at regularly?
It is actually, I was a huge comic book collector as a kid. And what's funny enough is when I reached my latter teenage years, I kind of felt like I had to make a choice, like it was kind of music or comics or whatever. I really got focused with the music, kind of put the comic books away for a little bit. And then, I would say about, 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of the artists that I was working with, they were big into comics, and it kind of re-sparked me back into it. I was like, wow, I didn't realize so many people were still collecting comics, and it was that big, and it kind of pulled me back into that world again. And I would say, going back about 4 or 5 years ago, I started, slowly lacing a lot of metaphors and a lot of references to a lot of comic book characters and things in my music. And I think there's been a gradual progression that there's been more of that each album, and it's not really something that I planned out. I think it just kind of happened because I've really gotten back full force into collecting and reading comics.
Is there any favorites? Any certain company that's your favorite, or do you kind of collect them all?
No, I'm a Marvel guy. I even did a video on that on the YouTube. Where I put the question out there for other people. Marvel or DC. What's your choice? And I know for me, it's been Marvel since I've been a kid. I mean, I've read some DC comics here and there, but I've always liked the writing and even the art for Marvel comics. And my character has always been, I'm a Spidey guy. and obviously, Wolverine, and a lot of the characters that a lot of people follow. But I would say from early age, I mean, Spider-Man was always my thing, and I think that really culminated, or not culminated, but I think when Todd McFarlane began doing the art for Spider-Man in 89, 90, that's when I was really at the apex of collecting comics, and I think Todd McFarlane's one of the best, comic book artists ever, and I think that's what really pulled me in and made, Spider-Man one of my favorites. And, he went on to do Spawn, and obviously,
Did you get into Spawn at all?
A little bit. I would say when Spawn came out, that's really when I was hardcore into music and kind of separated myself, and I was just focusing on the music at that time. Plus, at that time I was so broke. I was a starving artist. I didn't have a lot of money to buy comics at that point.
Right.
So I think it's been as I've gotten older, I've gotten back to a point where I'm financially stable, that I can invest back into some of the hobbies I had when I was younger, and it's like, I can buy a couple comics or I can eat tonight. It's not one of those things anymore. So I think that was another thing that, pulled me away from reading comics for a long time. And, all my extra money always went into music. It was like, if I had an extra $1, that was $1 going into my piggy bank, so that I could buy the next piece of equipment that I, needed, or, pay for studio time or whatever it was. And so, fortunately that's not the case anymore. So, it's allowed me to kind of delve back into, my childhood hobbies again. And like I said, once again, I think it's an extremely positive thing to be able to have, creative hobbies, to have, things that you can get into. I mean, some people are in the movies, some people are in the video games, some people are in the comics, whatever it may be. I think people need those kind of creative or just this, escapist outlets. You know what I mean? To kind of just escape life sometimes and be able to delve into other things that, allow your imagination to, to soar and pursue other things versus, I got to hit this 9-to-5 grind, I got to punch this clock, I got to make money, I got bills, I got responsibility, and, we all have that. And, for the people that stick true to that, I mean, I definitely give a lot of respect to the people who, know how to handle responsibility and do what they need to do, and then be able to make time to follow their passions and follow their dreams,
Right.
It's tough in this life to be able to do that, so the people who are able to do that, I give a lot of props.
All right, and you got a song on the Mad Scientist called "Music Is My Drug." You kind of touched on it a little bit, but is this kind of an insight on your personal life as far as like, do you live a pretty sober life? I know from your childhood experiences, I'm sure that might kind of be the case. But can you shed some light on the song, and as well if there's a connection to your personal life?
Sure, absolutely, and yes, it does directly relate to my personal life and in my childhood. Like I said, I had people in my family who suffered from substance abuse issues, and I made a conscious decision early on that I was not going to go down that route. And there's a lot of temptation in the music industry to partake in, a lot of extracurricular activities. A lot of different substances and things. And a lot of people tell you, it helps with the creative process, or it's part of, the experience, or partying, or whatever, And I always stayed pretty straight and narrow with that. And, I always, kind of told people, music is my only drug. I mean, that's what gives me that kind of rush and that kind of high that a lot of people will talk about, that they would get from drugs. And, it's, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's like a natural high when you work creatively on a new song and it's coming together the way you want, you record it, and you're really happy with the output of what you created. There's no feeling like it.
Right.
There's no feeling like
somebody feels it too, it makes it all that much better. Because that comes from your heart, and that's touching someone else's heart.
Absolutely. And so, that was just my ode to, loving the creative process. And like you said, I mean, from concept to recording to, putting out the music to performance. I mean, I think when you perform the songs and people are feeling it, I think that's the ultimate rush. That is the culmination of all the hard work. And when you can, get to the point where you perform the song and somebody's really feeling it and you delivered it the right way, and maybe you made a new fan or just someone who's, gonna check you out a little bit more, come to your next show, whatever it may be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no feeling like it. And really for me, I'm not down on people who recreationally use whatever they use. I'm not judgmental. That's everyone's own decision, whatever they want to do. My only thing is when whatever you're doing extracurricular begins to interfere with, the music itself. The whole reason why you got into things. And I've seen this happen where people get into music because they love music and they get caught up in the lifestyle versus, the actual creation of the music. And so the lifestyle ends up enveloping them, and it takes away from the whole reason they got into doing music, which was to make music. And so I think when it gets to that point, whether you're drinking or smoking or whatever it is you may do, when it gets to the point where that takes precedent over actually making the music or it affects your productivity, I think that's when people need to reevaluate what they're doing and try to, get back to the basics and the roots of, why they got into doing music in the first place. And so, that's why I say for me, music is my drug. I'm not judgmental on anyone doing anything, but for me, it just helps me stay focused on what I'm trying to do.
Right. Now, here's another song on this album. It's called Beyond the Hustle. To me, this is definitive JP the Hustler as far as subject matter and sound. I could be wrong, but maybe you can expound on that. But it tells everything that, like, you don't work, you don't eat, that kind of mentality. And that's one of the songs that really stuck out to me as far as on the album. I feel that's definitive. Like, if you were to say, who is JP the Hustler, I would show them this song, and it would pretty much say what all that encompasses your career and your lyrical style and things like that. Would you say the same thing?
Beyond the Struggling, the song with MC Valum. Absolutely. I actually feel like that is probably one of the best songs I've ever done. It does give kind of a narration of my life a bit, and it does really kind of explain, how I look at the industry, how I look at myself, and I mean, the song Beyond the Struggling, it means kind of like I've paid my dues, I've done a lot to try to get myself where I am today. And, I'm beyond the drama, I'm beyond the struggle. I've done all that, and I've been through it, and I've persevered, and I've come out the other side. And, that's pretty much the message of that song.
So, I know MC Val is part of Grim Reality.
Yes.
Do you know what she's saying in that song? Like, she comes in pretty hard. She comes in real hard, and she's a very intense, I'm guessing a young rap artist. What can you shed some light on what she's saying? Because she comes in with such an intensity that you feel like, what is she saying in that verse?
Right. Her verse is about basically, it's for her, it's like a middle finger to her doubters. So she's gone through her own struggle, her own paying dues. And I remember she sent me the lyrics for the music before she recorded it. It's essentially, for everyone that's doubted her, she persevered, and she's basically doing what she wants at this point. And a lot of people a lot of people who doubted her before now see what she's doing, and they're now giving her praise. That's kind of the gist of what her verse is. She's a very intense artist, and I mean a lot of that. I don't want to turn this interview into about MC Guy, but you know, she's from Ukraine, and you know, if you know anything about the politics of what's going on, there's you know a lot of internal struggle going on with Ukraine and Russia right now, and so that's something that she's been dealing with. She's right in the heart of it, and that drives a lot of her views and a lot of her music. And so I'll say, you know, that's kind of where she comes from with a lot of stuff. She's very politically driven, and you know, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get into too much into this interview.
We're gonna take another musical break. We're gonna listen to Beyond the Struggling, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk a little bit about how the inception of GRE, Grim Reality Entertainment. So we're gonna take a small break.
Sounds good.
On an apple box, in and out of Middle Valley, living in a shadow box. My hollow friends and neighbors came but never saved a stranger. So when the danger grew in anger, that created major. I am the mirror man reflected in the syrup can. Drink away the pain and shame and all of y'all that gave a damn. The truth is harder than the smallest of your enemies. To face yourself is facing wasted days and tendencies. Your clemency and mercy make it hard to bow and curtsy. My pride is high, so ride or die, and now I'm in my 30s. I lived a million seconds, recognize the real addressing. You only getting one shot and life don't taking seconds. For every time I sought revenge and ran it through my head, I kept my neck up in my head up, keep my action fed. I bring deliverance, ambivalence is limitless. Erase the ignorance, I flourish through eternal bliss. Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in. Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in.
Я не умру, да я останусь вопреки их желаниям, проклятиям и зависти. Помни темные дни, те бессонные ночи. Запомнила урок, поставив жирную точку. Не страшно, когда дают деньги за свою голову, в то время как снаряды падают по городу. Страшно, когда друзья берут в руки огня, а завтра его тело не могут вырезать из ранга. Выколи мои глаза, я не хочу видеть это. Как горит планета в угаре пьяного бреда. Моя родина не Киев, Питер и не Москва. Я родом из тех мест, где отвечают за базар. Это мой пиар, оставлю за собой след. Знаю, что такое получить настоящий респект. И когда душа направится в путь на свет, не будет стыдно перед теми, кто попал на мой куплет.
Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in. Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in. Beyond the struggling, the hustling, the muscling. Beyond the fussing, all I must to find the skill to win. From the negative and way to live to something positive. Growing up, blowing up, something opposite. The lawn is greener when you're feeling for a better life. My demeanor, misdemeanor when I'm feeling strife. It's a constant competition, make you play it right. The opposition in remission, let you see the light. Let go the past, leave it be for those who reminisce. Can't go forward if the inner demon still persists. Call the arms, it's a battle up inside yourself. Civil war from the core will affect your health. Mind, body, soul, cleanse it with the healing drug. Once you love yourself, you will find you overcome all the skeletons plaguing all the better men. From a hellion, growing to a better man. Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in. Every day I'm hustling, stay beyond the struggling. Stretching, flexing, muscling, try to keep it bubbling. Went through years of stumbling, stomach aching, rumbling. Drop the ball and fumbling, but now I'm about to run it in.
Alright, we're back with the X-Cast, JP the Hustler, once again. So, I know you've done a lot of things and you've heard Jerry with Insane Poetry. How did you even come into contact with Psycho Insane Poetry, Psycho Angelo, one of his other many names? How did you meet him? Or how did it all come about, the inception of GRE?
Okay, so pretty interesting story. I'll try to break it down to a short synopsis if I can. But basically, in 2000, the end of 2000, I actually moved to Houston for a year. I was working with an artist from North Carolina who moved to LA to pursue his hip hop career, and he had some big money behind him, and he needed a producer, and I ended up doing some production work for him. And he moved to Houston, which is where the label was located, and I followed suit, and I moved to Houston from November 2000 through till about May or June of 2001. And pretty much I left Houston because the situation didn't work out as planned. So I came back to California and had to kind of figure out what I was going to do from there. And at this point, I was figuring out, I had finished junior college already, and I was figuring out where I was going to go to finish out the rest of my undergrad, and also needed to get a job, to support myself when I came out here. So I ended up working for Sam Goody Music Store, which no longer exists. Right. But I was working at a Sam Goody in the mall near Laguna Beach, California.
And were you working a register or just kind of a sales associate?
I was an assistant manager. I got hired as an assistant manager because I had previous retail experience, and I told myself if I ever have to do retail again, I'm going to do it in something that I enjoy, which is music. So it was kind of a no-brainer with that. So yeah, I started working there. I was an assistant manager. I remember it was my first or second day on the job. Early in the morning, it was a Tuesday morning, I remember, because all the new albums dropped on Tuesdays. And so it was like 11 a.m. or something, and a gentleman walks through the door, and excuse me, I'm getting over being sick, so I had a little bit of a cough right already. Gentleman comes through the door, comes up to me and asks me, and I remember this distinctly, he asked me for the new Alcoholics cassette tape. And it was funny to me because at that point our cassette section was like 4 foot by 4 foot at that point because everyone was buying CDs. Right. And so I took him over to the section and showed him whatever, and then he came up to the register to buy it, and we just started chatting. And I don't know how the conversation happened. I think maybe he told me he knew one of the members from Alcoholics or something like that, and I had told him, I've been in their studio in Studio City, North Hollywood, Wolfpack Studios. And he goes, how you know about Wolfpack? And we started talking, and it turned out he was, Psycho from Insane Poetry, and I had heard him on Rodney and Joe Cooley, Get Ready to Roll. I had that cassette, I think, in my car at the time, or at home. And we just started talking, and I kind of told him my story, how I'm a producer. I just got back from Houston, was working on some stuff, whatever. And we exchanged numbers, and then slowly from there, we started talking, and he had just come out of, a couple different record deals, that he was working with, was not really happy, working with other labels.
Was that around the time that he did with DJ Bless, around that time? Or was that a little before or after?
You talking about the Sutter Kane thing?
Yeah, the Sutter Kane, the kind of rock kind of mix or whatever it was.
That was way later. This was I met Psycho in 2001. The thing with DJ Bless dropped in 2008 or 2009. Okay. So that was a lot later. So before that he had dropped obviously the classic album Grim Reality with Nasty Mix, which folded like the next year and was no longer in existence. And then in '95 he signed to Polygram Records. through, I think, another independent label. I think it was Nightbreed. They had started Nightbreed, but someone else owned it or something like that. I don't know the whole story on that. But anyway, needless to say, that deal didn't work out too well. And then he had done the music with Blackberry Records, which was a homie that he had. And that it just didn't work out. Financially, it just didn't work out for him. And so he was just at a point where he kind of wanted to do things independent, but he didn't really have the capital or really the business know-how in order to do that. And for me, I had already had an independent label before in the mid 90s, and that was the first label in which I put out my own music at first. And although it failed, I learned a lot from having my label at that point. I learned how to copyright the music and do the trademark and all the business kind of stuff involved with publishing and all that. And so we got to talking and we figured, hey, we're in a position that we could benefit each other. I produce, he raps, we're both kind of want to be our own bosses at this point. We don't want to be involved with other labels and all that kind of stuff. And so we started talking about, doing a label together. And I remember the first name he had for it was Babylon Records. And I remember doing the research on that, and there was like 20 other Babylon Records that already existed. I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. And so I started studying up on his history, and I was like, man, the Breakthrough Record, Grim Reality, that would be a great name for a label, because that kind of explains the music that you do and the music that we want to put out there. It's a grim reality, and especially the record he was working on at the time, Faith and Chaos. It was true to life stuff. It was basically every song was about true life current events happening. It's showing the dark side of it. And so I was like, that fits perfectly with the music that we're trying to put out. Grim Reality Entertainment. And so, we both put the stamp on it, and that was kind of the birth of it in 2001. And then we just went from there.
Yeah. So when did you take total control over the label and start adding new artists, or were you adding new artists while he was with you there when you were co-owning?
Early on, after we dropped Faith and Chaos in 2003, we both agreed that, hey, to actually make this a label, we need to add artists onto this label. And so we started adding the people around us. Cyclone knew a lot of people that he had worked with over the course of 5 or so years, and I had a couple of people that I had met from online that I started, doing some music with, producing for, and stuff like that. So we started pooling resources and bringing some artists on the label, and some of these names was like Lowdown, Craig Dizzle, Jay Sparks, Freaks. These were some of the early foundation people that were on GRE, and you hear them like on Ink Fade Poetry, Fallen from Grace record, which came out in 2007. I dropped a mixtape in 2005 that a lot of them are featured on. We did some sampler CDs that we put out that they're featured on. So really from about 2004 through 2000 and I want to say 8, we experimented with about 4 or 5 different artists on the label, and didn't really work out for one reason or another. A lot of it was just financials, or people just moving in a different direction than what we were trying to do with the label. And with a lot of the artists, it didn't work out. And then in about, I want to say 2010, Cycle was looking to make a move out of California. It wasn't working for him financially in California. And he had a business opportunity to go over to LSP, and LSP has been doing their thing hardcore since 2000. And I remember the first time that we did a show in Denver with Scum. This was end of 2006, and Scum had already gotten to the point where he had created a nice little buzz and following Denver and, had the merch game on lock, was really doing his thing. And by 2010, I think Psycho was looking for a situation where, he could really flourish. And Denver was already showing him a lot of love, and Scum was in a position where he could, do a lot for Psycho at that point. So Psycho made the decision to move to Denver and become part of the LSP roster. And then at that point, I took over GRE 100%.
Right. So, all right, that's so now because Scum went, in St. Porch you went with LSP, that kind of opened doors for collaborations and things like that. Were those doors already open?
The doors were already open. I mean, we already, GRE and LSP already had a really good relationship. We were already doing collabs back and forth. Psycho was already doing collabs on some of Scum CDs. I was already doing some production for some of the LSP albums here and there. I did some for Smalls and for Scum. And we dropped a compilation album in 2010 called Corporate Takeover, and we had a lot of LSP artists on that album. So we were already doing a lot of cross promotion and production and recording and collaborations with each other. And so when he moved over to LSP, it didn't change a lot as far as our relationship and as far as, doing music back and forth. What it really kind of allowed was Psycho to focus on being an artist instead of trying to also co-run a label, so that he could just do what he does best and make the music that he does, and it allowed me to kind of focus on the other thing I love to do aside from production, his business, and so it allowed me to kind of build a roster and produce for, the roster, and then also kind of guide and help build the label. And so that's kind of what happened. It was really, I think, at that point something that needed to happen, because we really hit a stagnation with the label in 2010 as far as where we were going to go and what we were going to do with the label, the direction and, what was going on. And, he had done the side project with Sutter Kane the year before. And, to try to just expand and do more. And I just think at that point for him, going to LSP was probably the best thing he could do for himself. And it really allowed me to kind of flourish with building the label.
Awesome. So one last kind of, a couple last things. What was kind of transition in a different direction? What were some of the hustles you did before getting into music? What was your worst job that you ever had? Like worst regular job, just regular, punch in, punch out.
Worst job. I'm gonna tell you, it was probably selling kids' shoes. One of the things I did for a long time is I worked for a lot of the different shoe stores. That's kind of what I did when I was at when I started being professional. And so when I met that artist from North Carolina that came out to LA, and I started actually working in big studios, because we worked in West Larrabee Studios, we worked in Wolfpack Studios, which was the alcoholic studio. We worked in some really big studios. And at that time, my day job, I was working at Champ Sports, and I was working for Foot Locker at one point. But in between that time, I had to work in the West Coast Pavilion Mall in West Los Angeles. I remember this. I worked in a little kid shoe store there, and it was funny because there were a lot of stars that would come in there. Like I saw a lot of people like Yo-Yo. I saw what's her name? It escapes me right now because it's so long ago. But I actually saw a lot of stars come in there, and some of their kids were just handful. As kids are. But trying to fit like 3 and 4-year-old kids with shoes. I mean, it was so rough.
It's a struggle even for the parents. I can imagine the person selling the shoes.
Yeah, and I'm a stranger, and at that time, I had facial hair, and, one of the things that I learned quick is kids don't like adults with facial hair if they're strangers. Yeah. So that was always fun. But yeah, that was one of those
things. Did you ever have any beard pulling incidents?
No beard pulling, but I had crying and pushing me away. I definitely had that. I mean, that sucks when you're there trying to hit the kid with a shoe and they look at you and they cry and push you away. That makes you feel good. So I think that was one of those moments where I looked at myself and I was like, yeah, I need to figure out what I'm going to do in my life because, I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. So, I would say that was one of those jobs. I mean, my first job was fast food. I think a lot of people work fast food for a first job, but I'm not going to say anything bad about that because that was the first job. It was my stepping stone job, and I think I only worked there for like 3 or 4 months. But that definitely wasn't a crazy enjoyable job. But I would say trying to fit little kids with shoes was probably a worse experience.
All right. This last question: what was the most embarrassing moment on stage? In the span of your career, was the most embarrassing? You were like, oh my God.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I already know it. It was my very first performance with, the first time I ever actually really performed on stage was with Insane Poetry. And I'm going to say this was like 2006. We were performing at the Knitting Factory in Hollywood. And because it was my first performance, like I was really, really good. I had learned all the lyrics to hype him and everything like that, but it was filmed. And we realized watching this video, I did not move. I did the cardinal mistake that a lot of people do the first time they perform. I kind of had my hat tucked down, and I think I was doing like this standing march in place when we were performing, so no energy whatsoever. It's pretty embarrassing because I remember a couple people thought they were clowning me for a long time about that. And I think that was one of the things that made me say, I'm going to have so much energy on stage, this will never happen again.
All right, man. Well, you know what? It's been a great interview. Is there any shout-outs? You want to shout out anybody right now or anything like that as we're leaving?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Well, definitely shout out to you. Thank you very much for having me on the program and allowing me to, let the people know a little bit more about myself. And it's definitely, it was a pleasure meeting you in Austin. I'm glad to have the opportunity to watch you do your thing. And, I know that we're going to, cross paths more in person in the future, more shows and all that. So thank you very much to you first and foremost. I definitely want to give a shout out to my whole GLA family, all the artists that, help support me and help me do what I can do. Thank you to them. Definitely thank you to the overseas supporters because it's been incredible for the fact that we do have so many supporters from so many different countries. It's unbelievable. It just shows the power of the internet. And so definitely thank you. I want to thank the people at LSP that I'm really cool with, Smalls One, Insane Poetry. So got a lot of stuff going on with them in the future. And then, of course, everyone listening right now, anyone that's ever come to my shows, anyone that's ever bought a CD, anyone that's ever checked me out online and, they're listening to me right now. Thank you very much. I hope everyone has, a blessed holiday and a happy holiday and, everyone stay safe, going into this new year.
All right, man. JP, it's been an awesome time. Hope it wasn't your average interview and we covered a lot of ground, but I really thank you for your head knowledge, your wisdom as far as being a kind of veteran entertainer, performer, and hope we can do this again, man. I really do appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I would love to do it again, and like I said, thank you very much, and happy holidays to you and yours, and hope you have a safe and blessed holiday.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
All right. Bye.